Hey folks, I know that some of you also grew up on things like Collectathons, so you might find this episode a treat. I say this because the Indie Gaming Collective actually tossed me a review key for indie studio Glovebox Games' Beardblade, a stage-based platformer that challenges you to clear its levels with the most rugged of destructive tools. Extra bristly facial hair. That's right, you'll be wielding weaponized whiskers, which leaves the question. Was Beardblade a tangled mess of curious quirks, or did it provide me a gamut of clever conundrums and constant close shaves? I'm your host Arlyeon, let's find out together. It would have just been another night for Branson, was it not, for a series of mishaps. First, one of his sheep munches on a magic artifact. Awkward, yes, but it's compounded when the smugglers, creatures hunting down those artifacts, can't figure out which of his sheep did it, and decide it's just faster to steal the entirety of his flock. What makes this truly harrowing, however, is the fact that Branson is a humble farmer. It's all he can do to simply keep up after them. At least, until he meets the imprisoned Mage Forbeau, whose specialty lies in unleashing the power hidden deep within someone's soul. As those ancient magics course through Branson, he finds himself awakening to the mythical power of beard magic. Yup. And honestly, it just serves to perfectly encapsulate the overall goofiness of the game and its story. Admittedly, it isn't really all that narratively dense, with the crux of its scenes being scattered across your adventures, but the ones that are there tend to be pretty memorable and help keep the plot advancing. Also, the Haunted Mansion segment, when you get there, is pretty stellar. Beyond that, I can say that the game does manage to tie things together with a fairly satisfying conclusion, and one that I gratefully did not need to chase down a slew of collectibles to earn, though I did fucking call it. But yes, that's right. While there might be a gamut of collectibles stashed away in all of Beardblade's stages, obtaining all of these is optional for the narratively inclined, which leaves us to chit-chat about the game at large. Now, as I've already mentioned, Beardblade is a 2D action platformer, tasking players with clearing out and conquering its various stages and freeing your kidnapped sheep. Whilst it's a ridiculous concept, in practice it's a lot of fun, given that each of the game's stages have a very distinct feeling to them. Sure, they start out straightforward enough, but it's not long until you're bouncing between unstable platforms, struggling to keep them activated, or hopping between balloons over an abyss, or dealing with a dreaded auto-scroller level. There's even one where you engage in a foot race with some little twerp. Your journey through the game will feel varied, which is especially impressive when you take into consideration that almost half of those levels are optional. This isn't an exaggeration either. See, Beardblade has a day and night cycle, which advances whenever you exit an area. This is important when you consider that almost every non-boss stage has a distinct variant depending on what time of day it is. This is awesome for a few reasons. For one, if you find yourself stuck on a stage or simply not jiving with what it has to offer as a challenge, all you need to do is swap over to its Twilight twin for something entirely different. For another, this means that the completionists in the audience have a veritable boatload of additional content to go through even after they've beaten the game. And it's not just the normal stages which change things up. While the bosses are exempt from day and night swaps, they were all unique and memorable enough to serve as perfect capstones to their respective areas. That said, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the crux of what I wound up doing in Beardblade, and that was, well, indulging in that collectathon itch. Now, don't get me wrong, I am legitimately serious when I say there's literally no reward for doing this. But I still wound up going out of my way to collect all 111 stage coins, every single treasure, completing my monster card collection, and getting every single music record. It started out as a curiosity to see if it would unlock something, and it just sort of escalated in the pursuit of that dopamine hit when I found a secret nook or solved a small platforming puzzle. But ultimately, when it boiled down to those last few I struggled with, it was stubbornness. It was stubborn pride, even without an achievement to show for it. And if you enjoy a challenge, getting all of them will certainly provide you one, since it obliges you to make creative use of all the mechanics the game has to offer, including a handful of optional ones for certain puzzles, which, will have you interact with the economy, so I guess I may as well mention that now. See, collectible coins aren't the only shinies you'll be gathering. There's also a more common variety of coin you'll accrue across the various stages. Color-coded for value. You use these over at the barber shop, which is helpfully run by Forbeau, because every mage needs a part-time job to make ends meet. But also, honestly, he's pretty good at it, since he can do things like grant you extra health, damage, or even brand new abilities like a ranged attack, a downward slam, and even a speedy rolling attack. And all from a fresh shave and a haircut. Like, I do feel the need to emphasize all of this is optional, given the game does provide you the few upgrades you need to progress, but everything Forbeau has goes a long way towards making the experience a lot more enjoyable and accessible, as well as granting you access to certain otherwise inaccessible secrets. And yes, they are a bit expensive, even with me going out of my way to clear out all the stages, but at the same time, well, the existence of instant death pits and other hazards in tandem with a generous smattering of coins meant my unfortunate death loops wound up generating me some seriously morbid interest over time. The double jump also contributed a fair bit as well. I'm not actually sure it's a keyboard thing or not. I wasn't able to test that out since I was lacking controller due to my cat fumble. I love you, but please stop chewing my wires. But at least on keyboard, the input would fail me and leave me plummeting to my death, which sucks since it's required to turn on certain switches and continue progressing. And I couldn't just change the input to a different button either. Keyboard inputs weren't customizable. It honestly hurt my soul a bit. And while I'm on the subject of controls and abilities, here's a fun fact. While you eventually unlock an upward attack, it's only usable while you're in the air. Weird. Still, that does sum up my gripes in a mechanical sense, and also aesthetically, since I only have praise for the game's presentation. Visually, Beardblade is a very good-looking title, with a visual style that I found quite endearing. The detail put into things like the protagonist's various attack animations, and even his movements are a treat, though, okay, his ability to climb with his beard looks creepy as hell. And it's not just Branson either. The enemy and the environments are handled with a lot of care, and I generally found the design worked to helpfully hint at secrets, telegraph dangers, and provide a vibrant world. And there's a rad 8-bit level to romp through. Also, on a sound design level, I actually enjoyed the music enough that I was legitimately disappointed that the collectible records didn't allow me to listen to the stage music. Yeah, so ultimately, you can safely say that my conclusion about Beardblade is, well, it's a good time. The stages and their nuances kept me invested throughout my journey, and I never really felt like the way forward was unnecessarily padded. Sure, there were alternate stages to tackle and collectibles to snag, but there was always something I could choose to do at my leisure or ignore in favor of progression, and so nothing ever overstayed its welcome. Sure, I still have some nitpicks about the controls, but ultimately, it wasn't enough to dissuade me from playing the game. It just really racked up my death count in certain double jump heavy cave levels. Ugh. Oh, and I'm not kidding when I said that the story actually plays out in a satisfactory manner. While it's not overly complex, I was happy. Overall, Beardblade is a hit, a title I could solidly recommend to all of my friends, provided they didn't have something specifically against 2D games or platformers. Anywho, I'd like to offer a big thanks for tuning in. If you agree, disagree, or just have something to say to me, feel free to comment. And if you enjoy my efforts to create new indie reviews, interviews, and gaming content, hit the subscribe button and the bell to show us a new release. For the Discord savvy folks, click the video description to find a link to my community, the Crit Hit Cauldron, and to my Patreon, as you can support me and the other members of Crit Hit. Lastly, if you want to see me get dunked on in indie games live, check out my Twitch at twitch.tv/Arlyeon. That said, I'll catch you on the next episode of Crit Hit. Take care till then, folks.